The interrogation chamber smelled like burnt metal and fear. I stood in magnetic restraints before the most dangerous being in the known galaxy, Queen Zarthessa of the Valkyrie Empire. Her obsidian exoskeleton gleamed under harsh violet lights, forearms folded across her chest, compound eyes reflecting my image 1,000 times over. Behind her, a viewing window revealed the wreckage of my patrol ship tumbling through the void. Human! Her voice resonated through translation implants embedded in my skull. You destroyed 3 of my warships. Killed 200 of my soldiers. And you did this to rescue 1 child. I didn't answer. My heartbeat thundered against my ribs. She moved closer, each footstep clicking against the metal floor with predatory precision. I have studied your species extensively since you appeared in our sector. Your military tactics are adequate. Your technology is derivative. Your political systems are chaotic. She stopped inches from my face. Yet you fight with an intensity that defies logic. My analysts cannot explain it. The restraints hummed, adjusting to keep me motionless. So I will ask you directly, human. My empire has conquered 47 species across 200 star systems. We understand dominance. We understand survival. We understand territory and resources. Her largest eyes fixed on mine. But your ship's log showed you crossed into a war zone, alone, to extract a single juvenile human from a collapsing colony. You had no strategic value to gain. No tactical advantage. No orders from your superiors. She leaned closer. The heat from her body made sweat bead on my forehead. Define attraction, she said. Not the biological mating protocols we've observed in your data. I mean the force that drives humans to irrational acts. The impulse that makes you run toward danger when every survival instinct screams to flee. What is the human word for this insanity? I finally spoke. Love. Queen Zarthessa's mandibles clicked, a sound I'd learned meant confusion. Love. We have this word in our databases. It refers to reproductive pair bonding and offspring protection mechanisms. Common across carbon-based species. It's more than that. Explain. I tested the restraints. Still locked. The child I rescued wasn't mine. Wasn't related to me. I'd never met her family. She was just a name on an evacuation list that got flagged as missed when your forces attacked. Then why risk your life? Because she was 8 years old, and she was scared. The Queen's smallest arms unfolded, manipulating a holographic display. According to your own military regulations, you violated direct orders. You stole a patrol craft. You entered hostile territory. You could have been executed by your own people. Yes. Yet you proceeded anyway. Yes. She studied the data, her antenna twitching. The child's survival held no benefit to you. Her death would not have affected your status, your resources, or your genetic lineage. By every rational measure, your action was counterproductive to your individual's survival. That's what makes it human. Her head tilted. Elaborate. I took a breath. Every species you've conquered, you said you understand survival and dominance. That's because you only conquer species that think that way. Species where individuals calculate their actions based on personal benefit. This is the foundation of evolution. Organisms that prioritize their own survival propagate their genes. Until they meet humans. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. We're not special because we're stronger. I continued. We're not smarter than you. Our technology isn't superior. But somewhere in our evolution, something broke. Or maybe it evolved in a way that doesn't make sense to you. I met her 1,000 reflected stares. We developed the ability to love things that don't love us back. To protect people we'll never meet again. To sacrifice ourselves for ideas and principles and strangers. That is objectively irrational. Yes. It should have been selected out of your gene pool. Probably. But it wasn't. Because the humans who ran toward danger to save others, even strangers, they built stronger communities. Tribes that protected each other survived better than tribes that didn't. We stopped being individuals competing for resources. We became something else. Queen Zarthessa's posture shifted. You're claiming this love is a survival trait? I'm saying it's the reason you haven't conquered us. Her mandibles spread, aggression. We destroyed your outer colonies. We pushed your forces back to your core systems. And you're terrified? I said quietly. Because you've never fought anyone who doesn't retreat when the math stops making sense. Every battle you win against us, we fight harder. Every ship you destroy, 10 more volunteers appear. You can't calculate our breaking point because we don't have one. She struck me. The blows sent blood across my teeth. You speak boldly for a prisoner. You asked me to explain. I'm explaining. The Queen paced. Her forearms gestured as she processed. If what you claim is true, if humans genuinely prioritize strangers over self-preservation, then your species should be extinct. Evolution does not reward altruism on this scale. Maybe we should be extinct. But we're here. And that 8-year-old girl is alive on a medical transport heading to safe space right now. Because you destroyed 3 warships. Because I love her. Even though I don't know her. Even though she'll never know my name. Even though saving her almost killed me. I leaned forward against the restraints. That's what you can't understand. That's what makes no sense in your empire's calculations. Queen Zarthessa stopped pacing. She stood motionless for 17 seconds. My strategists predicted you would ask for clemency. Or offer intelligence in exchange for your life. Or threaten retaliation from your fleet. I don't speak for my fleet. Then, what do you want, human? I want you to understand something. The war you're fighting isn't against our ships or our weapons. It's against an idea. The idea that everyone matters. That we're responsible for each other. That love, irrational, illogical, unprofitable love, is worth dying for. She approached the restraints. One clawed hand reached toward the control panel. And when your species is reduced to ash? She whispered. When your worlds burn and your ships are scattered debris? What will your love mean then? I smiled despite the blood in my mouth. It'll mean we fought for something bigger than survival. It'll mean we stood between the helpless and the void. It'll mean that little girl got to grow up. Foolish. Probably. The restraints released. I stumbled but caught myself. Queen Zarthessa watched me with those 1,000 unblinking eyes. You are free to go. What? I cannot execute you. If you are correct about your species, if you truly fight hardest when defending abstract principles, then martyring you would strengthen human resolve. She gestured toward the door. You will be returned to neutral space. I didn't move. Why are you really letting me go? Her mandibles clicked rapidly, the Valkyrie expression I'd never seen before. She turned away, facing the viewing window where stars wheeled past. Because for the first time in 400 years of conquest, I do not understand my enemy. And that frightens me more than any weapon. I walked toward the door. It hissed open. Human. I stopped. The child you saved. What was her name? Emma. Emma. The Queen repeated it, the syllables awkward in her translator. And if you encountered another Emma tomorrow? In another war zone? Would you do this again? I looked back at the most powerful being in the galaxy, the conqueror of 47 species, the breaker of worlds. Every single time. The door closed behind me. Through the reinforced walls, I heard a sound I'd never heard from a Valkyrie. Something between a growl and a sigh. My escort, silent guards in powered armor, led me through corridors toward a shuttle bay. Other Valkyrie soldiers stopped to stare as we passed. Word had already spread. The human who chose death over abandoning a stranger's child had walked free. In the shuttle, strapped into a crash seat as the vessel detached from the Queen's flagship, I finally allowed myself to shake. Adrenaline drained away, leaving exhaustion behind. Through the viewport, I watched the massive Valkyrie warship recede into the starfield. My comm unit crackled to life. Static, then a voice. Unidentified human shuttle, this is USC Defiant. Transmit identification codes. This is Lieutenant Marcus Chin, service number 77342. I'm the guy who stole the patrol craft. Silence. Then, sir, you were listed as killed in action 3 days ago. Not yet. More silence. What are your orders, Lieutenant? I closed my eyes. Somewhere in safe space, an 8-year-old girl named Emma was probably asking about her parents. Probably crying. Probably terrified about what came next. She'd never know my name. Never know about the interrogation or the Queen's questions, or the 3 warships burning in the void. She'd just know that someone came for her. That when the math stopped making sense, and the odds were impossible, and every rational calculation said to leave her behind, someone came anyway. Because that's what humans do. Lieutenant Chin? The calm officer's voice pulled me back. Sir, what are your orders? I opened my eyes. Take me home, I said. I need to file a very long report. And then I need to find out if there are any more Emmas out there. Sir? Because if there are, I said, watching Earth's moon rise like a pearl against the black, I'm going back for them too. The calm officer didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice carried something new. Something that sounded like understanding. Copy that, Lieutenant. Welcome home. The shuttle accelerated toward the blue-green world that had birthed a species crazy enough to love strangers. Crazy enough to fight for ideas instead of territory. Crazy enough to choose sacrifice over survival. Queen Zarthessa would study this. Her analysts would build models and run simulations. They'd try to quantify the unquantifiable, to reduce human love to equations and probabilities. They'd fail. Because you can't conquer what you can't comprehend. And you can't comprehend people who would rather die saving strangers than live watching them fall. In the interrogation chamber, the Queen stood alone, staring at the viewport. Her advisors had been dismissed. Her guards waited outside. She replayed the conversation, analyzing every word, every gesture. Define attraction. She'd asked the question expecting data. Military intelligence. Some exploitable weakness in the human psyche. Instead, she'd discovered something that made her empire's foundations tremble. An enemy that fought hardest when protecting others. Soldiers who volunteered for suicide missions to save people they'd never met. A species that valued abstract concepts, honor, duty, love, above survival itself. Her species had conquered through overwhelming force and perfect calculations. Every victory had been mathematically inevitable. But mathematics couldn't account for an enemy that rejected math itself. She pulled up casualty reports from the human conflict. 3 years of war. 15 major engagements. The Valkyrie had won 14. And yet human resistance was strengthening. Every defeated colony produced refugees who joined the military. Every destroyed ship created martyrs whose names inspired others. Every victory the Valkyrie claimed seemed to make humans fight harder. It defied everything she understood about warfare. Queen Zarthessa accessed the psychological profiles her intelligence division had compiled. Thousands of human prisoners interviewed. Patterns analyzed. Motivations catalogued. One phrase appeared again and again in the transcripts: I couldn't leave them behind. Soldiers who'd stayed with wounded comrades instead of escaping. Civilians who'd returned to burning buildings to save neighbors. Ship captains who'd rammed Valkyrie cruisers to buy evacuation vessels time to flee. All irrational. All tactically unsound. All absolutely devastating to morale among her forces. Because the Valkyrie understood sacrifice for the hive, for the queen, for genetic preservation of the species. That made sense. That fit evolutionary models. But dying for strangers? For abstract principles? For love of the unknown? That was insanity. Or genius. She couldn't decide which. The door chimed. She didn't acknowledge it. The chime repeated. Enter. Her chief strategist approached, keeping a respectful distance. Your Majesty, the Council demands explanation for releasing the human prisoner. The Council will receive my report in due time. They claim you've shown weakness. That executing him would have sent a message to. The Council does not understand what we face. Queen Zarthessa turned. Tell me, strategist Cthon. If I had executed that human, what would have happened? His people would know their resistance is futile. Would they? Chthon's antenna twitched, uncertainty. Intelligence suggests humans fight harder when defending principles. That they view martyrdom as inspiration rather than deterrent. That every executed prisoner becomes fuel for their irrational crusade. She gestured at the viewport. That human, Chen, he destroyed 3 warships to save 1 child. What do you think humanity would do if we made him a martyr? Silence. We've been calculating this war wrong. The Queen continued. We've been treating humans like the other species we've conquered. Species that submit when the casualties become unacceptable. Species that negotiate when survival is threatened. And humans are different? Humans are incomprehensible. She pulled up footage from the interrogation. Watch his face when he speaks of the child. No calculation. No fear. Just absolute conviction that her life mattered more than his own. Cthon watched. His mandibles clicked rapidly. This is aberrant psychology. Perhaps the result of trauma, or it's not aberrant. Our intelligence shows this pattern across their entire species. Firefighters who run into burning structures. Medics who treat wounded under fire. Parents who shield children with their own bodies. She paused. They have a saying, greater love has no one than this, that someone laid down their life for their friends. Irrational. Powerful. The Queen's forearms gestured sharply. We've conquered 47 species by breaking their will to fight. We calculated acceptable casualty thresholds. We identified strategic targets. We applied overwhelming force until surrender became the logical choice. The proven method. Which fails against an enemy that rejects logic itself. She turned back to the viewport. Chen said something that troubles me. He said we're not fighting their ships or their weapons. We're fighting an idea. Ideas can be suppressed, Your Majesty. We have extensive experience with, not this idea. Not love that extends to strangers. Not sacrifice without benefit. Not a species that treats every individual as inherently valuable. Her voice dropped. How do you suppress an idea that makes its believers stronger when you attack it? Cthon had no answer. Queen Zarthessa accessed military projections. Even with the Valkyrie's numerical advantage, the models showed the war dragging on for decades. Centuries, perhaps. Because every human casualty seemed to generate 2 more fighters. Every destroyed colony became a rallying cry. The math didn't work anymore. Your Majesty, what are your orders? She stood silent for 30 seconds. When she spoke, her voice carried an edge Cthon had never heard, doubt. Initiate diplomatic channels with human leadership. Propose ceasefire negotiations. The Council will never, the Council will obey. Or I will explain to them what I finally understand. She met her strategist's eyes. We cannot win this war. Not because humans are stronger. Not because their technology is superior. But because they've weaponized something we cannot counter. Which is? The willingness to lose everything for nothing. She gestured at the empty interrogation chamber. Chen sacrificed his career, his freedom, possibly his life, for a child he'll never see again. For no reward. No recognition. No benefit. Madness. Maybe. But it's madness we cannot defeat. The Queen's mandibles spread in what might have been respect or fear. Because if every human is willing to make that same choice, to sacrifice everything for abstract love, then, killing them only proves them right. And proving them right makes others believe. Cthon processed this. You're saying the more we fight, the stronger they become? I'm saying we're feeding a fire that burns on irrationality itself. Every battle we win creates more believers in the human cause. Every atrocity we commit validates their conviction that some things are worth dying for. She pulled up an image, Lieutenant Marcus Chen, bloodied but unbroken, staring into a Valkyrie interrogation camera. This human asked me if I understood attraction. The force that makes his species run toward danger. She studied his face. I told him no. But now I'm beginning to comprehend something terrifying. Your Majesty? Humanity doesn't fight to win. They fight to fight. They fight because their love demands it. Because their principles require it. Because letting others suffer is worse than death itself. Her voice dropped to a whisper. And you cannot defeat an enemy that has already accepted death as preferable to abandoning their values. The strategist stood frozen. Initiate the diplomatic channels, Queen Zarthessa repeated. And pray that human leadership is more rational than their soldiers. Because if they're not, if their leaders share this same irrational love, then we've started a war we cannot win. Cthon departed. The Queen remained alone, studying the stars. 47 species conquered. 200 star systems claimed. 400 years of unbroken victory. And now doubt. Because somewhere in human space, an 8-year-old girl named Emma was alive. And the human who'd saved her had walked free from Valkyrie captivity carrying a message the Queen couldn't ignore. Every single time. That's what Chen had said. If he encountered another Emma, another stranger in danger, he'd do it again. Not because it made tactical sense. Not because it benefited him. Not because it could be reduced to equations or evolutionary advantages. Simply because he loved. Queen Zarthessa pulled up the definition again, the word that had started this revelation. Attraction, human context, the inexplicable impulse to value another being's welfare above one's own survival. The irrational drive to protect, preserve, and sacrifice for individuals' ideas or principles without expectation of reciprocal benefit. She'd asked him to define it. He'd given her a single-word response that had seemed inadequate. Love. Now, alone in her flagship, the conqueror of 47 species finally understood. Love wasn't a weakness to exploit. It was armor she couldn't penetrate. A weapon she couldn't counter. A force that grew stronger the harder she struck against it. And humanity wielded it without even understanding how terrifying that made them. Her comm system activated. Your Majesty, human diplomatic channels are responding. They're willing to discuss ceasefire terms. Good. Transmit our initial proposal. Yes, Your Majesty. And the human prisoner, Chin, our scouts report his shuttle reached Earth safely. Of course he had. She'd known he would survive. Had counted on it. Because somewhere in her calculations, the Queen had made a choice that defied her own logic. She'd let him live. Not for tactical advantage. Not for intelligence value. Not for any reason that made strategic sense. She'd let him live because executing someone who'd risked everything to save a stranger felt wrong. And that realization chilled her to her core. Because it meant his irrational love was already infecting her thinking. Queen Zarthessa stood alone in the interrogation chamber, staring at the stars, and wondered if humanity had already won. Not through force of arms. Not through superior tactics. But by asking a simple question that had no rational answer, and then, living that answer with such conviction that even their enemies began to believe. Define attraction. She finally understood. And it left her speechless. 2/2